commitment to not only our tech community here in Dublin, but more importantly, the impact that we can all make right now on social justice. So continuing to have conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion will undoubtedly result in meaningful change and how we continue to advance not only Central Ohio, but the city of Dublin as an inclusive community of choice as it relates to not only quality of life, but recruiting talent within our community. And so we're thrilled today to have an incredible panel of community champions that so we hope you enjoy the next hour and a half to help expand your network and have a great impact and meaningful impact and dialogue around empathy and diversity and inclusion. So with that, I'd just like to thank Chris Borja. So Chris is our incredible moderator today. He's also one of our rising tenants at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. So we're proud to support a Dublin-based business and partner with him on this event. We're really excited about the format. We hope it's more engaging. We hope you feel like you're at the exchange a little bit with the stage in the middle and the live Q&A. And with that, I hope that we have a great dialogue, and I'll throw it back over to Chris.
Sarah, we're going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. First up, we're going to bring up Ray Bajaj. Ray is a Chief Technology Officer at Cardinal Health with responsibility for Fuse, IT strategy, enterprise architecture, and execution transformation. And prior to joining Cardinal Strategy Health a year ago, he worked at Capital One, where he was the head of the Garage, an innovation hub for their financial services division, and led architecture, digital transformation, and shared services for the organization. Of business administration degree from Michigan State University, a master in technology management from Columbia University, and a bachelor in electronics and communications engineering from India. So go ahead and give Ray a big round of applause. Here he is on stage. So let's see the love in the chat. And Ray, welcome to our panel. Next up, we're going to have Commissioner Kevin Boyce. Commissioner Boyce is a Franklin County commissioner who grew up in an extended family of modest means, but one rich with life lessons on hard work and education. Commissioner Boyce overcame the poverty of his past and to earn a master's degree in public administration, serve on Columbus City Council, where he improved city neighborhoods and finances. He led a nonprofit dedicated to improving public schools, and he was appointed state treasurer of Ohio, promoted as managing director of a New York-based investment banking firm, and served in the Ohio State House of Representatives, and all by the age of 40. So give Commissioner Kevin Boyce a big round of applause. Share some love in the chat. Let's see it. And Kevin Boyce, go ahead. For Kevin, go ahead and turn on your camera and microphone. And welcome to the stage. Next up, we have Tony Cunningham. As a managing director with Perscalis, Tony provides vision, operational, and executive leadership for the Columbus team. Ms. Cunningham is a co-founder of Black Tech Columbus, member of the Franklin County Tax Incentive and Review Commission, and the American Association of Blacks in Energy. Tony earned her Master of Science in Marketing and Communication with Franklin University and a Bachelor of Science from Ohio Dominican. So share some love in the chat for Tony Cunningham. Let's see it. There you go, Tony. And next up, we have Doug McCullough. As CIO of the City of Dublin, Ohio, Doug McCullough has worked to connect people to opportunities and promote change in initiatives ranging from smart and connected cities, IT workforce development, connecting and autonomous vehicles, and blockchain in government. He has spoken as a subject matter expert and advocate on technical subjects, diversity and inclusion, and using technology for economic development. He's on the boards of Perscalis Columbus, TechCore, Black Tech Columbus, and Jewish Family Services of Columbus. Doug earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Toledo in Information Systems and Operations Management, and a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Notre Dame. Let's welcome him to the stage, Mr. Doug McCullough. Welcome to the stage. Let's share some love. Let's see it in the chat. All right, give him a big round of applause in there. That's all for you. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead and, let me see. I don't see Doug up here. Doug, go ahead and turn your camera and microphone on. I see everyone cheering for you. He's waiting for more applause. Maybe we need to get more applause, kind of like the encore presentation. All right, so Doug, go ahead and turn your camera and microphone. If you need to, refresh and come back if you're having troubles, and we'll bring you right back on here in just a second. So let's go ahead and get started with some of the questions. Opal Tometi, one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, said in an interview that this time is different. This time is different. What makes the country's focus on the social justice movement different this time around? How can companies measure success around diversity, equity, and inclusion? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So excited to be able to get feedback and insights from this distinguished panel. And so the first question for all of you, and any of you can jump in, as leaders in your organizations, what are some of the inclusion goals and commitments you're setting with your team? So as leaders in your organizations, what are some of the inclusion goals and commitments you're setting with your teams? And any one of you, feel free to go ahead and jump in and answer the question. And for the audience, any questions that you have, type them in the Q&A. When we get to that section, we'll be able to get to all of your questions. So go ahead and take it away. Does anyone want to go ahead and take the first question? Commissioner Boyce.
All right, I'll start. Hey, Dublin, good to see everybody on the virtual chat. This is the COVID-19, the new normal, as they say. And so it's so great to see such a strong engagement, and I'm excited to be here. In Franklin County, we've been thinking very deeply about this issue for quite some time. Since 2018, we started to look in the mirror and peel back the layers for ourselves and say, what is Franklin County doing where we can be more inclusive and create sort of a big tent environment where everyone has a place and everyone is treated equal, treated fairly, and has access to the resources that we have on your behalf. And so one of the very first things we did is we declared racism as a public health crisis. And there are many facets to what that means and really where we're going with it. Let me start with first the value proposition itself. You know, we wanted to establish publicly and emphatically throughout our organization that we understand that racism is the root of a lot of our challenges that we're dealing with today. And what started our conversation was looking at poverty in Central Ohio. You know, there's not a place in Central Ohio you can go and you don't see an orange cone or a crane in the sky. You know, we are growing and things are happening. This is even during COVID-19, but pre-COVID-19, it was off the charts. But we were also seeing poverty growing in the same kind of direction. And so when we started to peel back the layers and look at it, what we discovered was race was a core element that was allowing poverty to flourish. And so we decided to take that on. And so one, you have the declaration itself, that's a value proposition. Two, embedded in that, we create a series of goals for ourselves as a county. How do we hire? How do we contract? You know, we set goals to all of those things. Now, let me just say this, and I don't want to take up too much time because we've got some great panelists I want you to hear from. Let me say this, setting goals does not level the playing field. You know, it is the means to an end for us to acknowledge that we need to grow in that area, invest in growing in that area by taking an actual action and putting money where our mouth is. And then finally, looking throughout our organization where we can do a number of things that set the stage for inclusiveness, for diversity, and most importantly, for progressive growth in how we approach race in Central Ohio. And so that's what Franklin County is doing. You'll see that our numbers in contracting have increased substantially over the last 3 years. I've got some numbers being generated as we speak. And that's the type of measuring stick that at least allows you to say, well, again, goals don't change it, but at least allows you to say we're invested and we're moving in a progressive and right direction.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyce. Anyone else want to field the question? Again, as leaders in your organization, what are some of the inclusion goals and commitments you're setting with your teams?
Yeah, Chris, let me go ahead. This is Ray Bajaj. First of all, welcome to this event. And Kevin, I really like your answer about what City of Dublin is doing. Let me talk about Cardinal Health. We have put into action a world-class diversity and inclusion strategy, as well as solutions, program, processes, where we are building a robust culture that will benefit our employees, our customers, our communities. And many of you know, our CEO, Mike Kaufman, he is such a passionate leader about diversity and inclusion. Our company, we declared Martin Luther King Day a company holiday, which was not the case before. We launched unconscious bias training, created DNI 101 program that now more than 8,000 people in Cardinal Health have gone through. We work with McKinsey to develop a program so that we can groom Black executives and grow them in their careers. We also joined Gender Parity Collaborative, which is a consortium of a business women association where we are working on how to advance the women of color, encouraging men to be allies and promoting women in senior leadership roles. As you guys know, our company is a global company, and we are putting diversity and inclusion and equity strategies in different areas. In China, we are doubling female leaders. In Brazil, we are focusing on keeping our LGBTQ employees safe. So I can say that a lot of work that is happening inside Cardinal Health to make this place the best place for everybody to work, and especially the diverse talent that we want to attract in our organization.
Excellent. Thank you, Ray. Doug, Tony, do you want to go ahead and chime in on the question?
Yeah, I'd love to. Perscolis is a nonprofit, and our focus is to support individuals and provide access and opportunity to individuals who might not ordinarily get it in terms of training and support in launching their technology careers and helping to create some equity in that process. And so one of the things that we had to do was look at ourselves internally and how the individuals that we are saying that we're here to help. And so it was about language. And as we all know, language is really important and words matter. And so when we talked about it, we looked at creating equity by thinking about the language we use, not only to describe and share about the individuals we support, but the language we use with one another. And so strength words and ensuring that we are not creating a further deficit for individuals by presenting them in a way that people see them as less than who and what they really are. And so it's not like because an individual comes out of a nonprofit for training or what have you, that they're any less qualified, that their skills are any less relevant and great. It's more about how you present and open the door and create the stage for that person to have entree. And so equity is big, and language is big. And when it comes to equity, so we changed how we refer to the individuals that we work with. We're supporting them on their journey. They're our learners. They're not students. These are adults who are putting in the work to get the relevant skills needed so that they can come out and compete in the workforce. And we need to celebrate and promote that. And we need to share with others that they're just like everyone else. Not necessarily looking for a handout, but definitely we need to open up so that we can give a hand up and get them on the field to fill some of these open jobs and make sure that people have opportunity. So that's what we've done as an organization just to start.
Love it. Thank you, Tony. Doug.
Yeah, so I'm representing two organizations, really. One of them is the City of Dublin, where I work, and the other one is Black Tech Columbus, which has taken some actions. As far as the city is concerned, we took an attitude of listening as well as an attitude of action. And one of the things the city did was to form a Chiefs Advisory Committee to help the community have a voice in dealing with police issues. And the other one is a more total community committee. And both of those have just gotten started, and we need to give them some time to do some things. Of course, the city made a statement as well, and we have a long way to go. We are at the beginning of this journey. But I do want to remind us about, when many of the protests, when many of the statements were taking place, we had a real situation with criminal justice, police justice, Black people dying in the streets. And so forming a police advisory committee, I think, is admirable. I have a relationship with the chief of police here, and good things are happening there. As far as Black Tech Columbus is concerned, we are a Black organization with the word Black in our name. And so we didn't really, I don't think, need to say Black Lives Matter, but we did anyway. We made a statement. But we also like to put the focus in on economic justice. So to me, a Black Lives Matter statement is about justice. and not only criminal justice and the criminal justice system, but also economic justice and educational justice and all of the different places where justice is critical. And so we also put out a call to action because we're hearing from a lot of companies that said, hey, we're a tech company or we're a manufacturer. We want to do something, but we don't know what. Well, how do you plant a flag and say, here are some things that you can do and we will help you? So just a couple of things we identified. One of them is adopting a school, because you have to deal with the educational component as part of economic justice. And I know that a lot of people feel like this is far afield, but without economic justice, you don't have criminal justice. We don't relieve ourselves from police brutality if we are not on the same kind of playing field, competing in the same space. And so educational justice, connecting Black founders to capital is something that can be done to generate jobs and economic opportunity for people. And then finally, generational wealth. And so I realize that widens the scope a little bit, but to me, to say something like Black Lives Matter without generational wealth, without economic justice, without serious reforms in our education opportunity is not quite as helpful. We have a long way to go. We all do. But this is a focus area. And I think we need to get our focus right first before we'll get results.
Awesome. Thank you. Outstanding answers. And for all of our participants out there, what I ask you to do is, if you hear something that sounds outstanding, like if something just stands out to you, a sound bite, something that just hits you, type that in the chat. Also, I invite you all to take a screenshot and share some of the quotes, some of the takeaways that you get from this event to really maximize the impact, not just for those that are here in like live joining us, but all those that can join on social media and maybe get some of these things to continue the message out there in our communities. So we'll go to the next question. What's the best way for business leaders to keep themselves accountable to their employees, their customers, their communities? So as a relatively small community, how can tech leaders keep each other accountable? I'll open it to our panelists. Anyone that wants to jump in?
I'll start out, just food for thought with everyone, that relationships with communities, Black communities, but all communities, anyone for diversity, LGBTQ, Latinx, relationships with those communities are something that need to be invested in when times are not hard. And I think we find that when you have those relationships and problems emerge, that's the way to be accountable. I think hiring comes from who you know. Hiring, retention, promotion, all come from who you know and who you're comfortable with. If your team, I'm talking to tech leaders here, if your team doesn't know any Black people and isn't comfortable in those circles, then Black people or people of color are unlikely to rise in those organizations. It's one of the reasons in Black Tech Columbus, everyone is welcome, so that we can mix and mingle and get to know each other, our priorities and things like that. So I would say to leaders that your moment of education has not stopped just because the protests in the street or may have slowed down. The educating yourself and proactively establishing relationships with whole communities is an excellent investment of your time.
Excellent. Thank you.
So let me add to the answer out here. For us, accountability is key, because what gets measured gets done. And how we are thinking in Cardinal Health is we are tying D&I goals and metrics to executive compensation. And this is one of the ways to enforce accountability. Having D&I metrics, balanced scorecard around hiring, retention, development, succession planning, promotion, performance management, presence of bias in the organization, we have created a management operating system to be on top of this important issue. And as a community and as leaders, we need to invest time and resources in building diverse talent pipelines so that we can draw on diverse talent, share best practices between the organization, and join the voice on this subject will help with building a better workplace culture as well as thriving community.
Excellent. Thank you, Ray. Commissioner Boyce, Tony?
For Tony.
Oh, thank you. So I believe that, people say all of the time, and I used to hear this in the workforce world, we have all these jobs and no people. And I was thinking, I have a whole bunch of people with no jobs. So I'm trying to figure out what the disconnect is. And I think holding yourselves accountable to, if you're saying you're open and you're saying you're ready for innovative and new ways to do things, when ideas come out, and folks are willing to share those and kind of build a strategy around them, even if it's just a pilot, a different way of bringing in diverse candidates, or pilot a different way of supporting your incumbent team for growth, you'll then see that shift. But if you expect that you want to leave it open for the folks that are trying to get in to figure it out, I think that's unfair. And then folks will go, well, I tried, and I had a scorecard as a leader, but I didn't get any talent that was ready. And so, oh, well, I think that on accountability pieces, where's your innovation, and what are you willing to try, and what are you willing to risk? I call it controlled detonation. What are those things that we can do that will open up the way? But if it explodes, everything's not going to fall apart. We can do those types of things, but people have to be willing to do things a different way, and they have to be willing to put a little bit of risk out there, and be uncomfortable with change. But if you're going to be held accountable to that, then that's what it's going to require, is for you to be innovative, but also be willing to be uncomfortable.
I'm not sure that I can
Thank you.
add. I'm not sure that I can add much to what everyone has said, but maybe just try something a little different. One of the things that I struggle with is when we say we need more diversity, and so we're going to contract. We're going to hire a Black person in the next position, and we're going to, try to diversify our team when the next opening comes up. The problem with that is that it oftentimes undermines the credibility of that person then coming in. Then internally and externally, people say, well, they were hired because we needed more diversity, not because they were qualified. And so I'd like to find a way for companies and us too, the county, to begin to evaluate and hire people and really not have access to what they look like, and I think, I think that in itself, if the field was level and the playing field was level, then Black people should be able to be hired because they have skills too, and because they have talents too, because they have knowledge too, and not being hired because they don't fit a certain, what I thought was what my IT person looked like, or what I thought what was my finance person should look like, or what I thought was another position. So, I think we've got to find some kind of way to, have more of a blind hire, so that we're not looking at race one way or another. But we do have to have this sort of conscientiousness about inclusion and diversity. I can tell you, as a small business person myself, when I used to try to get business at Franklin County, yeah, I could get the meetings because people knew me, but could I get business? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And
Right.
a lot of it was because, I give you one little quick story, anecdotal story. I used to own a tow truck company, if you can believe that. I was a part owner of a tow truck company, and we were just trying to get on the county's tow, to tow when you park, and you not pay those meters and everything, and somebody, has to tow your car, we would be that entity, or a car accident or whatever. And we couldn't even get in as in that business. And I think a lot of it was just, historical legacy relationships that have been around, and so we have to be willing to break that up a little bit. We have to be willing to spread the peanut butter, if you will. And so those are my only two additional points.
Can
That
I
actually
add
leads
something in
into
there?
our next question. So what's some advice? What's the first thing that a business leader could do tomorrow to ensure greater inclusivity in their organizations? Or what programs have you instituted in your own organizations or families to be able to embrace inclusivity? So open it up to any of the panelists.
Yeah, I'd like to tag in there, and really responding also to what Commissioner Boyce was just saying. In the private sector, I think we have a lot of large companies that are oriented towards quarterly results, and look at something like diversity as something they can solve this quarter, by making a hire, or even in supplier diversity by doing that. And that's just too short term and too limited of an outlook. And so to answer this question, I think that we need to look at this as a significant transformation in our businesses and in our governments as society has begun to. So what we saw with the protests, I feel, is a cathartic moment with a huge awareness happening amongst all sorts of sectors of society, and people really changing their heart and their feelings about what was what. I think we need to see that in business leadership, in technology leadership, and not look to the low-hanging fruit, which is, if we solved these things, we would then have diversity. That is really not the case. It's going to take generations, of time to do that. And so I would like to see us have a much more longer-term focus and far loftier goals about equality, equity, justice, equal access, and those kinds of things. So I realize it's not as measurable as sort of what Ray is talking about, which I applaud. I agree. You need measurable goals and objectives, and then you need to be accountable to them. But I think that you need both. I think you need a vision and a clear recognition of, let's be realistic about what we're talking about. Racism is not going to go away with business results. It's not going to be something that we can just put on paper. We need that, but we also need a larger vision.
If I could I just jump in on that? Because Doug, you made me think of something that I think is also not talked about, but we need more in the corporate setting, and that's diversity and inclusion at the board level. And the reason why that's so critical is because that, as I talked about earlier, sets the tone for the value proposition of the organization. When the board, which kind of is the sort of driving engine of all things that company will focus on, when the board is diverse, then you have diverse perspectives that go into how that plays out in their business planning, in their business line, so forth and so on. And I just think that when you look at corporate boards across the board in most places, you're going to see a very limited amount of diversity at the extreme level, I would say, across America, and where they can have an immediate impact is to begin to think about diversity and inclusion on their board. And I'm not talking about this, I'm not diminishing creating D&I offices and positions. And, I think that's kind of the trend right now, where I like to see the real change is at the top, the grass tops level, as opposed to the grassroots level. Because if you got both, you can really create a healthy environment. If you got one and not the other, then you diminish the depth of that for that diversity and inclusion to really be a part of the value proposition of the organization.
That totally makes sense. Commissioner Boyd and Doug, let me build on the argument that you are making. So if I have to encourage business leaders, I will say that tomorrow everybody needs to start the conversation about this subject in the organization. We often pride as leaders that we have all the answers. This is the space where I will say that when I jumped in and I came to realization that there are a lot of things that I don't know on this subject. So recruit the truth tellers in the organization. Recruit that mirror. Ask the question what diversity and culture of inclusion means in the organization. How people are feeling about this area. How you as a leader can support this initiative. And we are so lucky that we have an amazing chief diversity and inclusion officer. And I'm going to embarrass him by taking his name, Devray Kirkland. Work with your D&I leader to create a strategy, a program around this initiative. Lead with authenticity, openness, humility. And I will say a touch of vulnerability on this subject. I think that will get the conversation started in the organization.
If I can.
You're muted.
Okay. Sorry, I was hitting the button too much. If I can jump in on, I too want to go back to something that Commissioner Boyce said around diversity at the board level. So maybe last year before, we had a funder, a community funder, tell nonprofits, when we start to evaluate your proposals now, we're going to be looking at the diversity of your board. And we're going to require you, nonprofit, to have this diverse board that looks more like it represents the communities that you serve. Sounds amazing, right? Sounds great. The challenge with that, and to Commissioner Boyce's point about the grassroots coming up versus top coming down, you say that to the nonprofit, but the way we get board members a lot of times, especially corporate board members, is we're told this person wants to be on your board and we want to put them in that seat. We're looking for nonprofit boards for our executives to serve in the community. When the executives that you bring are not diverse, then the nonprofit can't get a diverse board of people who have influence and access, who can support that nonprofit and will move that mission forward. And so it was crazy to me to say to the nonprofits, you have to have this diverse board in order to get some funding from our organization, when we have no control over, when we go to a corporation or someone and say, hey, we'd love to have your organization participate, or they call us and say, hey, we got an executive that loves your organization and would love to join your board. We're like, okay, that's fantastic, but they're typically not diverse, because in the upper levels of the organization, in executive management, there's not a lot of diversity. And so we have to really think about doing it both ways. As Commissioner Boyce said, there's this thing from the grassroots pushing up, but there's this whole piece around the executive level and even the boards that run these corporations, holding people accountable, so that you get some diversity in your executive ranks that are then available to come out and inform our nonprofits and support our communities in a different way. So I just wanted to put that out there, that that's something that was pushed down on nonprofits. And we were kind of like, okay, we don't necessarily have control over that, but we will do to the best of our ability what we can to recruit diverse board members.
Excellent. So we have one more question, then we're going to go to the Q&A. So before the last question, I want all of our participants out there, so 100% participation. I want you to share in the chat the biggest takeaway so far. To this point, what's the biggest takeaway? Share that in the chat. And I know we have a lot of awesome community leaders and business leaders out there watching. So if there's something that you want to share that in the chat as well. So what have you or your organization done to ensure greater inclusivity? Type that in the chat. So 100% participation, either something that your biggest takeaway, because it might spark an idea in somebody else or help bring it back to their attention, or something that you're doing. If you're doing something amazing, brag on it for a second. It might spark something so much greater. So do that in the chat. 100% participation, go for it. And our final question. So in a remote work setting, our workplace has changed, our communities changed. In a remote work setting, where it can be difficult to like empathize with the employees, observe the smaller aspects that can have a big impact on the culture of your company or your organization. So microaggressions or recruiting practices. How are you ensuring inclusivity among your team? So in a remote work environment, how are you still able to encourage inclusivity among your teams when everyone's kind of working it out of their own homes? Anyone want to jump in on that?
Let me jump in and frame this thing, which is first of all, remote work setting has leveled the playing field for all our employees in Cardinal Health. The first thing to build an inclusive team is to have trust. And a critical component of building the trust is creating space for people to express themselves, where they can be vulnerable and show up as they need to. I'm going to make it very personal. When I moved to working from home, I was very uncomfortable because this is not I was used to. And I had several meetings with my leadership team on different subjects, on conversation around race, on inclusion topics, on how they are doing working from home, working parents. Radical candor and openness help the team to come together, where no one knows the perfect answer to the case in this uncertain situation. But we have created an environment where we are having the conversation. We inside our organization started podcast, connecting with people remotely, onboarding of new employees, building communities in remote settings, how to do check-ins with employees, and proactively engage with team, whether it is Slack or Zoom, text or email. And I will encourage everybody to over communicate, because this is the time where we need to stand together and build that inclusive culture in the organization.
Yeah, I would add and throw in there, I think there's a lot of risk for vulnerable people when it comes to working from home. I have a positive message here, but we need to be aware of that risk. As a Black person, I can tell you that I put on a professional stance when I come to work, and when everybody goes home and we all turn our cameras on, there's your diversity. We have different lifestyles and homes and situations, and there's a lot of risk for someone who is different needing now to try to fit into an organization that may be hostile to them digitally. I don't think it's all doom and gloom, though. I'm actually quite optimistic about the opportunities of digital in our lives, which can level a playing field. There is more risk in the office, at the water cooler, in the social circles, at the after work happy hour, for me not to fit in. I don't mean me, Doug, but someone who may be an outsider, to not fit in to sort of the social norms that are there. When we're at home and my results speak for themselves and it's all electronic and we can put me on more of a level playing field with others, I may thrive. And so I guess I would ask people to, on the one hand, reduce the risk of people who are different in your organization by maybe not always requiring us to have our cameras on, and recognizing that, people in different cultures have different lifestyles in their homes and different ways of living outside of the office that we've never had to maybe present in professional settings. But at the same time, look out for those gyms who are thriving and who are beginning to produce a lot differently, because the pressure of the social fitting in has been reduced. And for those people who are maybe thriving on the social boost that they're getting because they fit in really good, maybe they're not as valuable as maybe you've put them on this pedestal. And maybe that quiet person who was uncomfortable suddenly begins to rise. So I think as leaders, we need to keep our eyes on this entire thing and both help people thrive in this environment and recognize when they are thriving.
Commissioner Boyce?
Okay, good, Bertoni. But the only thing I'd add is, I think just creating a flexible environment for employees and for the organization to adapt to the COVID-19 setup. I think 2020 has been new for all of us in many ways, and I don't know about many of you. You all kind of probably have a little more technology background than me. But I really wasn't familiar with Zoom and all these, and now this, program and all these other, things until COVID-19 hit. And at first it seemed kind of neat. And then I started feeling like, my home was my private place, it was my place where I wanted to go and be away from, things. And and it's, I have a picture of this because it means something to me. You may not understand it, but it's, it means something to me. Or maybe I don't, have a picture of something for that reason. But the point is that I think just remaining flexible in the conversation and allowing employees, as Doug said, maybe Ray said it, but to not have your camera on sometimes, or to, to not be, for us all to not be judgmental because we're on camera, but I don't have on a suit and it's a formal meeting. I'm at home. Do I want to walk around my house in a suit all day? Quite frankly, when I get home, that's the first thing I do is take the suit off. And so now having to wear it in the house, it changes my whole mental vibe when I'm home. And so I think that is a mental health thing, and so we have to remain flexible for our employees to do that. The one thing I'll say about my own staff, when we first started off, we shut the county down and sent everybody home, and we didn't see each other. We were used to seeing each other every day, basically. And so like a month or so went by, and I was just like, I need to see you guys, and so it was right then, but everyone was allowed to plan for, okay, on Friday at 2, we're going to be on the camera, so you can do whatever you need to do to get it that. And so the point is just being flexible and allowing, know that we're all adapting to this environment, and we all have to sort of be, allow for everyone's individual situation to play out.
I think the only thing that I would add to that is check on your strong friends. You hear that a lot when folks seem to have it all together and they're managing well, their home is great and their job is great and friend group is great and everybody's doing their thing. And then COVID hit and it threw us all in a tailspin. And we all have, even as leaders at work, we're trying to figure out a new way to put out to our teams, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is the pivot. You're hearing from leadership who's in these rooms, these virtual rooms, trying to figure out what our next move is. And sometimes we leave our organizations day to day running to the strong ones. And the strong ones are stressed out too, right? So the strong ones are trying to figure out, I got to keep productivity up. I have a team that reports into me that I'm trying to make sure I support, encourage. I'm not sure what's next. In the beginning of this pandemic thing, we were literally not sure what was next. And so I would just say, in this process, make everyone. I did this piece where I sent these snack boxes. It was just it was the smallest thing, but the team didn't know that I had all of their addresses, and they received a Amazon gift, and it was a snack box. And it was like, hey, we're all gonna have snack time together. Let's open our boxes. Let's eat together and chill out online and say hey. And then one of my staff meetings I did.
Okay, I'm taking that idea. I'm borrowing that
all
idea.
right,
I like
I'll
that.
send you the link to the snack boxes. And then another
All
time
right.
I had social distancing staff meeting in the park because it was time for our staff meeting. I said, okay, everybody organize. We're going to meet at Franklin Park, which is beautiful. We're going to social distance and we're going to have our staff meeting in the park because we needed to see, touch, and feel one another. And so thinking of innovative ways to do that, or pop-up surprises or thank yous, or just one-on-one, just ping somebody and say, hey, just want to check with you and make sure you're doing okay. Your work is good. Everything is good. You guys are amazing. But I want to personally check in on you and make sure that you're doing okay. And believe it or not, my team does it with me. You're the leader. There's a lot on you. I just want to ping and ask you, is there anything you need? Is there anything else that we can be doing to help move this thing along and make sure that we all win? So just, we don't want to forget that we have to check on our strong team members too.
Love it. Awesome. And Commissioner Boyce feels like we should have snack boxes for this meeting. So great idea. Love it. We're doing great on time. So I actually have time for another question, but for all our participants out there, go ahead to the Q&A section, go to the Q&A tab, start populating that. So when we get to it, we have a number of questions. And one of the unique things, again, when you go to the Q&A, you can actually upvote the questions that you want answered. So there's a bunch of questions on there. We might not get to 100% of them, but we'll get to as many as we can, but we'll answer them in the order that it rises to the top. So if you upvote it, it'll rise to the top. We'll start there in the Q&A section. So another question for our panel. So many of you serve in formal and informal mentoring roles for talented young BIPOC individuals, Black and Indigenous people of color. How are you advising these professionals to gauge an employer, a company, or an organization on inclusivity? What counsel do you offer for these individuals as they search for the best place to work?
So some of them are actually better at counseling us, and I go back to kind of Ray's point that we often think we have all the answers, and we'll tell you how to navigate. Often we don't, and we have a younger generation here. I'll say the millennials and Gen Z, who are bringing to the table a lot of real solid information about diversity and making organizations more diverse. And sometimes I think we need an attitude of listening. Interestingly enough, some of the questions that have been coming up to me have to do with, is it okay for me to wear my hair like this? I come from a generation where, no, it's not okay for you to wear your hair out. Cut all that off. Stop that. And I've been changing that advice and saying it is absolutely okay for you to do that. And you're going to have so much better of a career if you do it now and go through your career as much as you can, as authentically as you can. That missed my generation. We wear these, you know, we do different things. So I think on the one hand, we need to advise as the senior people and as leadership. On the other hand, we need a better back and forth and more clarifying questions. And we also need to learn. And in some cases, I think we need to learn from our younger generation more than we're teaching them.
Yeah, Doug. Let me add to the answer. First of all, the advice I'm going to give to young Black people of color is do some research about the leadership team of the organization. I think Commissioner Boyce said this thing very, very clearly, which is, and which I totally believe in, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, the goal and the vision is set from the top. And who is leading? Who's the CEO? Who's the board? Look at the leadership team running the organization, how diverse the executive team is. Look at the makeup of the organization. What diversity strategies and program the company is adopting. What is the mission and value statement of the organization? And if you have a sneak peek into leadership MBOs, what are those leadership MBOs look like? I can give you my personal story. I joined Cardinal Health a year back. And one of the data point when I joined Cardinal Health was looking at the CEO, Mike Kaufman, how passionate he is in the community about this subject. I double click into the data. 60% of Mike's executive team is diverse. 25% of the entire executives in Cardinal Health, 24% of management, 46% of entire company is ethnically diverse. The numbers matter. So I'm going to say that advice to the young professional is do your homework about the leader who is leading the company, the makeup of the company, the values, and what language the leaders are using about the subject before making an important decision in your career.
I was going to defer you, Tony. You want to go, Tony?
Yeah, I would just say I love the idea around that authenticity, Doug, and showing up initially as who you are. And if, the organization accepts you that way and you haven't had to put on, I grew up in an era too where, and not to say you don't get ready for an interview, even how you dress and show up. But that altering piece that you feel you have to do, keep that to a minimum, and then go in and have the conversation and ask critical questions that are important to your value set. I think that a lot of times people think that an interview is about putting their best foot forward so someone will like them, when really it's a two-way conversation to determine whether it's going to be a good fit for both of you. And I know sometimes with the individuals that we are journeying with, they're so eager to get the actual job that they may be tempted to want to give answers that they think people want to hear, not ask the hard questions because that may mean they don't get selected for the role and those type of things, but really encouraging people to just go in authentically, ask the questions around your value set that are important to you, because you already know you're bringing the skill set. And so be prepared to share that piece, but really just make sure you know who you are and what you want when you go in, so that as you're having this conversation around whether or not this is going to be a mutually beneficial relationship, you're doing it from a place of authenticity and genuineness.
Yeah, I think all of those points are spot on. The only thing I would add is maybe ask people who work at the organization, if you know people or who have worked there, what the culture is like. Because I think, when you're interviewing for a job or you're looking at a company, it's kind of like dating. You only get that sort of, what the imagery that you're looking at and the things you're looking at is designed for you to see it and have a positive reaction. If I'm going out on a date, I'm going to put on my best look. I'm going to, maybe do some things different with my hair, just to make sure that I'm, presenting my best. But imagine if you could, this is going to sound crazy, I'm going to say this, but imagine if you could talk to the previous person that person dated, and get some idea. And that's kind of the same thing with workplace. Find people that have work there currently, or have had challenges, and maybe even what they share with you, some of that authenticity that they present can help. It may be tough things. They may not score high on inclusion. They may not score high on, trajectory and that kind of thing for minorities, but they may have other things that still encourage you and that you want to, and you're willing to accept, because you may be the pioneer. You may be the person that is, helping to change that culture. And so, just keep that in mind. And again, I'd say keep a sort of flexible mind about it, that there is no sort of clear formula. I know I've worked at companies and places where my perspective, in my opinion, is one thing, and somebody that looks just like me and has similar background to me, they may feel a completely different way. So it really comes down to my own personal experience too, and the things that I'm looking for. And so got to be flexible to take in the information, but to make your own sort of judgment call based on what you think your needs and wishes are.
Excellent. Love it. And Tony especially liked the idea about asking the person they dated before. I saw her. Great idea. Get some background. So love it. Sarah, how are we doing on time? Let me know. Just share that in the chat. Just want to see if we have time for one more question, if we're going to go to the Q&A. So just let me know that real quick. So everyone else, go ahead and go over to the Q&A. I do have another question that, as we head over there. Many companies focus on the bottom line impacts of inclusive workplaces, like improved ability to attract and retain talent, higher quality decision making, stronger relationships with customers. While all of these are good reasons to focus on DEI, what are the other factors that business leaders must take the lead on to ensure that inclusive policies are embraced? So as we go into the Q&A, so all our participants go to the Q&A and start populating that, and our panel will answer this final question before we go to the Q&A.
Well, I'll start us out. If you look at what's happening in business right now in terms of the transformation of markets and the digitalization of everything, I think that consumers are having a much more effective way of influencing and making decisions about what they buy and who they work with. And the amount of data that's available about organizations is really huge. And so, not for nothing, if you're making business decisions, I think that, you need to be accountable to the people who are buying your products and services, and you need to be able to tell that story, and it should be in your blood and in your bones. And I think that those companies are going to begin to rise to the top in the marketplace. I also think from a purely competitive standpoint, being more creative and more innovative, a more highly diverse team is going to eat your lunch every day. And so, if you're not getting there, this is a competitive advantage that you don't have. And I'm being very cynical here and saying there's a bottom line dollars and cents reason for doing this. But I also think that the authenticity that people are able to have in your organization will eventually begin to affect your source of talent. Yeah. And you're going to have 100 people in your company and the authenticity isn't there. Your talent is going to go down, and your people, your lifers, are just going to be up. So there's a number of different business reasons. I really could go on all day about why, as an organization, you're going to be more profitable, have more customers, have better staff, better innovations, and those things, even before you get to whether it's the right thing to do or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Doug, my answer is going to be a very similar answer. So I'm going to say +1 on innovation, and especially as a leader of Fuse at Cardinal Health, we are always looking for diversity talent to bring diversity of thought, diversity of ideas. I'm gonna just +1 on the thing that you said, which is the quality of problem solving is higher with diverse teams. People coming at solving the problems from diverse perspective, from different experiences. I have seen that the results are much more creative, and difficult problems can be solved by people bringing their diverse experiences to the table. So I am very, very encouraged by how can we get diverse ideas, diverse experiences, people from different backgrounds. They come to the table, jam, and you will see the magic happen.
I don't know. I'm not sure I could add anything. I think they both hit it spot on. I'm not sure there's much more to add.
Same here. I love Sarah's question in the chat, though.
All right, so we'll go over to the Q&A, and at the very top, panelists as well, you can click over to the Q&A section, and we'll start from the top and then
So do we just start to answer it? The one that, or we just type it in? Is that what we do? We type in the answers?
Oh yeah, so we'll start from the top. So we have Sarah's question, suggests some short-term action steps for the organizations to have long-term impact. Anyone want to take that one?
I think we talked.
We'll do this as lightning rounds, so we'll go with faster answers for these. And if we don't get to your questions, then we'll be able to answer them at a later time, so we'll have a record of all the questions that were asked. So anyone want to take the first question?
I would just jump in and say, I think that we talked a lot about it in the discussion about some of the short-term actions that organizations can take that will have a lasting effect. You know, being innovative around how you bring people into your organization, looking at how you work with the talent that you do have, and being unique in how you move them around and support their growth and development to create retention. And so I think we talked a lot in our discussion about some different things and some different ways and things that companies have done, especially with Fuse, to create this opportunity for organizations to have a long-term impact by looking at the way they bring talent in today.
Yeah, I would add in there, clarifying how talent advances in your organization today is going to have a huge impact on the whole organization. And this goes for everybody as well. We haven't spoken today. We have in previous events about white men. There's a lot of people who are advancing or not advancing, and there's a lot of bitterness, frustration, and confusion about why did I advance or why did I not advance. Clarity on this is good for everybody, not just your diverse team, but it's good for everybody. And I think it will boost morale for the entire organization.
Yeah, and I'm going to add just 3 bullet points, and we're going to move to the next question. I think remove bias in decision making. Performance has to be based on meritocracy. As a global company, we need to be culturally intelligent.
We can
All
go
right, next question will for Mary. Her question: have any organizations represented here taken a stand on Executive Order 13950 on combating race and sex stereotyping?
We have not, to my knowledge. The city of Dublin has not.
All right, next question by Robert. How has your approach to interviews and resume reviews changed to allow for diversity, social, economic, cognitive, gender?
Go ahead, Ray.
No commercial boys, I'm going to ask somebody else to answer because Rob works for Cardinal Health, so he will love to get another perspective.
That's funny. Well, I think, let me talk about my office and then let me talk about the county. The way I approach things, I always want a diverse staff, but again, I focus on, so when I was a legislator, I had one staff person, and that person happened to be an African-American female. So she moved over here with me as a county commissioner. And then you get, a few more staff. And I was really keen on wanting to diversify my staff and keep it as a diverse group. And but it was important to me to hire the most qualified person. And if it happened to be an African American, if it happened to be a woman, or it happened to be a white male, whoever, I was looking for the best person. And then secondarily, it would be diverse. So my point is, I ended up hiring somebody who didn't meet the diverse quotient that I was trying to meet, but she was the best person that I had interviewed. And I think that's important because it doesn't diminish if I hired her and then someone said, well, he just wanted to hire another woman. He wanted to hire a white person. He wanted to hire a black person. So I think it's just critical that we focus on hiring best people and take race and gender and these things out. Now, then there comes a time where you have to be conscientious about what that means, what you're doing, because we all have biases. We all have, perspectives and experiences that feed into how we see things. And so it's really important that we take that conscious step. And that's what we have to do as a county as we're hiring, literally hundreds of people a year. We have to be much more thoughtful about statistically what our organization looks like. We serve a county that has 20% African American race. So we want our county infrastructure to look that way too. And so, yeah, that's kind of that goal setting that we set. But for a big organization like Franklin County, goals do at least help us continue to create the kind of data that points us in the right direction. And sometimes you need that to kind of make sure that institutionally you're heading in the right direction.
All right, we have time for 2 more questions. The next one is by Jeffrey. How can we change our resume screening processes to be more inclusive? If our screening software processes look for keyword matches, doesn't that force conformity? Your thoughts?
So I would love to kick this one off because I'm in the whole workforce development and helping people try to break into roles. And I think that, one of the things that needs to happen overall is that our HR practices need to be reviewed in a lot of our organizations. Some of us have been doing things the same way for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And we bought software that we thought at the time, 15, 20 years ago, we thought keyword search was the way to go. Keyword search. Then we turned around and taught people making resumes. Hey, make sure your resume has these keywords because the system and the algorithm is not going to even pick you up if you don't. And there's all this stuff. And what it served to do was to further drive out the individuals that we said we were trying to include by doing something that would be nondescript and use these keywords instead of looking at names and people. And so now we have to go a step further, I believe, and look at that software or new software to create. And I know there's some out there. I can't think of the names of them right now, but there is software out there that helps you take out and redact all of the data that would give you a clue on what the person's race or gender or sexual orientation or anything else is, and just have you look at their skills, talents, and abilities so that when you meet them, you've met their body of work before you've actually met them. And then that way you're talking to them and viewing them from a different lens. And so I think there's some tools out there that can be utilized, and there's just some innovation that needs to happen around the screening process that will allow us to get to what we want to see in terms of how we view talent.
Yeah, and I would add in there, change your position description. The bias is taking place not when you evaluate people's responses. The bias, the signals are in place because of 150 years of bias in this country. The university requirement, the educational requirements, the years of experiences, the alignment that we describe our perfect candidate. Then we're trying to work with the machines to do that. So that's where you can do something. And if you really want to laugh, try to take the university requirement out of your position description and see how your organization balks at that. Try to put something in there that allows a second chance employee, someone who has a criminal record or is, coming out of the prison system. Your organization is not going to allow that. These are deep conversations that I think we can have about, we're not going to get some of this as long as our requirements are what are being kicked off in our evaluation process.
All right, we have time for one more question, and I would like to hear from all of our panelists on this one. Question by Sarah: what's giving you hope resulting from the impact of the Black Lives Matter movement right now? So what's giving you hope resulting from the impact of the Black Lives Matter movement right now?
I'll start off with that one. I've had the fortune of going to some of the protests during the summer, and doing some of the rallies and marches and whatnot. And what gives me hope is, in this time, I saw as many white people as I did Black people marching. I saw a very colorful crowd of people from backgrounds from all over. And I think that is an indication of transformation. And I think that's an indication of growth for our country. And I do believe that a new chapter is starting in American history. I don't know how that chapter plays out as it's written, but this definitely chapter, whatever number, and there's a new beginning for the future of America. And hopefully it's all positive. And I am very hopeful about that.
Yeah, and I'm going to plus one that as well, which is what's giving me hope is there are all sorts of people, from different ethnicity, background, and they're saying enough is enough. We have George Floyd, we have Ahmaud Arbery, we have Breonna Taylor, and this needs to stop. And this sentiment is there from small cities, and it's there in big cities, all across the country, and I'm going to also say across the world as well. More people are getting involved to make change because they are seeing for themselves that we are better off if we eradicate systemic racism from the society.
Yeah, I would just say too, I think what's given me hope is that more people are willing to have the conversation internally and be vulnerable to what they don't know, but what they want to know. And so I know for us inside of Perscolis, a book club came out of it, and we're reading Stamped by Ibram Kendi. And their next book online is White Fragility. And then folks want to read How to Be Anti-Racist. And what I think, and it's both sides, it's people from all ethnicities and that are reading together and discussing and dialoguing together. And that gives me hope because genuinely deep down inside, most of us are all alike. We want what's fair. We want what's right. We are compassionate people. We don't want to see anyone, no matter what their race, color, gender, sexual orientation, be mistreated and abused or even killed. And so when you appeal at that basic human level and people understand we're more alike than we're different, then they want to figure out how do we take away some of these differences and really, or keep the differences that make us this kaleidoscope of beautiful people, but really get rid of those negative pieces around being different and come together so that there's a greater understanding. So that gives me hope that people just want to have the conversation.
Yeah, and I'll throw in there are some famous photos from civil rights struggle. I believe it was from a protest or march of the sanitation workers where they wore sandwich boards that said, "I am a man." And that's how far back the concept of Black Lives Matter goes. It's the same statement. So what gives me hope is seeing, as Ray has said as well, white people in other countries where there are not a lot of African Americans, people all over the world, instead of me screaming, "My life matters, I matter," other people are saying, "He matters, we care. We are no longer going to allow for a world in which our friends and neighbors and people who we live with are killed, and that we care so little about them that their lives don't even matter." And we have to remember what Black Lives Matter really is talking about. It really isn't, can we get better jobs and can we get promotions and many of those things we've talked about. Our very lives don't matter enough for us to stop killing Black people. And so I have hope because people who may not be at risk of being killed are standing up and speaking on my behalf as a Black man. That's very powerful. And if you go to some of these protests of Black Lives Matter and you are a white person, you may see Black people crying, not because of the pain and suffering they've gone through, but because of your recognition and willingness to ally with this movement. It is extremely deep, and it gives me a whole bunch of hope that I've never had before. So let's keep on the fight.
All right, as we bring the plane to a landing here, one of the things that we have the opportunity to do now is to take this event and take it outside into the community. And one of the ways to do that is to be able to share through our social media platforms, to be able to share in our communities, in our companies, the organizations that we are part of. How many of you would be interested? Let's go to the chat, Shailene. How many of you would be interested in spreading this message even further than today's event? If you are, just type in the word yes. Type in yes in the chat. And we'll also call Sarah up to the stage again to be able to help us wrap up. So yes, 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 yes. Okay, so here's how we're going to be able to do that. With events like this, oftentimes it's for the benefit of those that are here. But look at how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of people are out there that need to hear this message. If you could think of somebody out there that could hear, that would benefit from hearing this message, type in me. Type me. If this is something that you know somebody out there that would benefit from hearing this message. So I'm going to give you all an opportunity right now to be able to make that happen. So first of all, I know some of you have been taking screenshots. If you've been trying to take some screenshots somewhere along the way, type in screenshot. And if you tried to take some screenshots of this, some of you made us look really bad because our mouths were like deformed and all crazy positions. So we're going to pose real quick and be able to give you all a really nice shot. So we're going to give you about a 5-second smile where you can get us in our most favorable look instead of what you probably have. So I'm going to count 3, 2, 1, get your screenshot ready. We're going to take a selfie picture with all of us. You can use that to share on your social media channels, share some of the things that you discovered, some of the things that impacted you, some of the things that you saw written in the chat, and put that on your post. You never know how just a few words or a few sentences or quotes can make an impact out there, and it expands to all of our audiences. Tag one another, tag everyone in the pictures, tag other people that have joined with you, and it goes from having a small gathering here this morning or this afternoon into one that can reach into the tens of thousands of people in our community. So who am I missing? Somebody disappeared. What? I'm missing somebody.
Doug.
Where is Doug? Doug, where'd you go? Doug, everybody cheer for him. Doug. Turn your camera and microphone on, or is he refreshing? I said I was going to take a picture and he disappeared. All right, let's see it in the comments. See it in chat. Doug. Where's he at? You coming back? There you go. Keep it up. I don't want to miss out on Doug being in the picture. All right, we're gonna take it, and if you can get back on in time, we'll take it again. If you're good at Photoshop, type Photoshop in the chat, and we'll add Doug to the pictures, and we'll use one of the earlier ones. All right, so everybody, so 3, 2, 1, and then we're gonna hold a smile for like 5 seconds. Y'all can take your screenshot. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. All right, you get it? Hopefully y'all got a better picture than the ones you're catching us in action. Sarah, do you want to go ahead and help us wrap up the event? All of our participants, all of our panelists, thank you very much. Commissioner Boyce, thank you. Ray, thank you. Tony, thank you very much. Doug, thank you. Sarah and all the Dublin Economic Development team, all the work you put into this, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to you, Sarah, and you can go ahead and wrap us up.
Thank you, everyone, especially our panelists today, for such a meaningful and thoughtful exchange. Something that really stood out to me over the last 90 minutes and truly my last 365 days in economic development is that relationships simply matter, and relationships not only with our communities, and that also includes our workforce. So those relationships need to occur, as Doug said, not just during tough times, but all the time. And that was a great reminder, Doug. We hope you will continue to embrace empathy. I think that's a powerful word. I think that will help move us towards progressive and positive change. And as Ray and Commissioner Boyce and Tony shared, to go divide and conquer after this event and lead with humility. So just to close, I'll say as Chris, thank you so much for being our awesome moderator today. We did launch a new version of our Dublin Reality Check website, so dublinrealitycheck.com. Hopefully in the next couple of days, we can get a recording of this event up on the website, but we'd love to hear your feedback after this. Thank you so much for spending your lunch hour with us, especially our panelists. We'd like to keep the energy and the camaraderie around Dublin Reality Check, and we look forward to our next event. So thank you so much. I'll hand it back over to Chris.
All right. So thank you all for joining us. One thing that's also unique about this platform is we get to simulate what happens at a live event. So typically when we meet in person, you arrive, it's networking, you're meeting your friends, getting to know new people. We go through the actual programming, and then afterwards you have an opportunity to meet and connect with others that are like-minded, that care, people that want to make a difference. So after I come off stage, you're going to be at the tables again. Feel free to click around on any table, just double click. Turn on your camera and microphone, join the conversation, click on their profiles. They can click on yours. You can really be able to build some connections and take it even beyond this event. So thank you again for joining us. Enjoy your time at the tables.